Welcome to another episode of That's Some Crazy Shit with Kelly and James. I am one of your hosts, Kelly, and my other host, the other host, is James. How you doing, James?
What's up, my sister? I'm good.
You know, it has been yet another crazy week. We are, 2 weeks into 2 weeks into 2021, and it's already got some historical shit that's gone down. We've impeached the president twice.
Emphasize twice.
FBI on heightened alert with civil unrest in allegedly all 50 states. I say allegedly because I haven't done enough research to say for sure in every state, but from what I've read, allegedly there will be violence in all 50 states, including the Capitol.
Now, this is some scary times.
It really is some scary times, and it classifies as crazy shit because it's some crazy shit. And we are still in a pandemic, and not only are we in a pandemic, it is getting worse, right? It is getting worse. They are talking about an increased number of deaths, and the virus is mutating into a different strand. And like I said last time we met, we are not out of the woods.
Hangover year. 2021's a hangover year. We still got residual 2020 going on.
We just need to just chill.
Yeah.
But in thinking about 2020, I just wanted to briefly go over crazy shit that went down in 2020. Now, we will get to today's show, which we are going to do the Men in Black. Me and James decided that we were going to try to dive in and find out some information on the Men in Black, and we're not talking the movies.
Yeah, not Will Smith.
We're talking the actual Men in Black and you know, kind of pose the question, do they really exist?
Yeah.
But before we get to all of that, I wanted to just, James, go over, I read an article in the New York Post talking about, you know, crazy stuff. They called it crazy stuff. We call it crazy shit that went down in 2020. So, of course, one of the craziest things that we can say is COVID-19, right? That's some crazy shit. But remember earlier, we also had those really horrible Australian brush fires.
Yeah, and it's like I had even forgot about him until you brought him up again. The whole continent was on fire. 47
million acres were burned.
That is crazy.
Think about that. That's some crazy shit. Here's something that you might have forgotten about too. Prince Harry and Meghan, they quit the royals. They broke up. They left. Unprecedented. Does not happen.
Maybe because they knew their reptoids or reptilians kill.
Another thing that was crazy that I think took everybody, we were just all shocked, was the death of Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, that was
totally, I could not believe, it took my brain a minute. What I was being told was not computing in my brain. It took me a minute to really come to the grips that Kobe Bryant had died in a helicopter crash. And I mean, and other people died along, and it's very, very sad, including his daughter.
Yeah.
But that was something that happened in 2020 that we could say was just some crazy shit.
You know, it's funny. It happened, and I think about it, it's like you didn't realize it happened during 2020, you know?
Yeah. 2020. Another thing, and this is only for if you're a movie buff. So if you're a movie buff, Parasite swept the Oscars. And if you haven't seen Parasite, it is a foreign film. It's a non-English film that won Best Picture at the Oscars. Never happened before, right? So Best Picture, Best Director, Best Original Screenplay. It won all these Oscars. Unprecedented for Best Picture to be a non-English movie. So only if you're a movie buff. Something else that happened in 2020, Harvey Weinstein and his verdict. He got, you know, all these people came out of the woodwork accusing this man of doing these horrible things.
After all these years, people started believing these victims.
And people may have forgotten that the stock market crashed in 2020, right? On March 9th. Suffered the worst single point day ever. Of course, something that's still going on today, but kind of erupted in 2020 was the Black Lives Matter. and the protest, and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and all these people that were killed by the police, and all the waves of protest, and all the corporations coming out and backing the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020. Unprecedented. Hadn't done that before.
Right.
And here's one that we didn't even talk about, but the death rumors of Kim Jong.
Right. He was gone. He disappeared. Yeah, he was dead.
He was supposed to be gone. He emerged 20 days later from the time that they said he was dead and said that he was just fine. Just fine.
I have to ask you a question. Did it look like he had a little lipo done?
I don't know. I'm just saying he was dead. They talked about his sister taking over.
Right.
All this stuff. Yeah, and all of a sudden he's back to life. We didn't really, that's some crazy shit. That was crazy. Another crazy shit that happened was the Twitter hack. I think people forgot that Twitter was hacked. And a teenager from Florida took over the Twitter accounts of political figures like Joe Biden and Bill Gates and Elon Musk and Kanye West. And really? A Bitcoin scam.
I don't tweet though, so.
Yeah, there was and then the one that we didn't talk about were the murder hornets and how they arrived in the US in 2020. They were spotted in Washington state.
Yeah, they found a nest.
Yes. And then that massive explosion in the Beirut port. Remember back in August?
God, that kind of went away, huh?
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah.
Killed at least 190 people.
I remember seeing video of that. You could see the shockwave.
Yeah, remember that? Just out of the blue, just boom. And then another sad thing that I didn't even know this man was ill. Chadwick Boseman's death. Didn't even know that he had cancer, right? I was so hurt by his death, as everybody was.
Yeah.
Right? We were all shocked. He died back in August. And the death of the Supreme Court Justice, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Right?
Yeah.
She was 87. She died in September. And then the death of Eddie Van Halen.
That was a big one too. God, they were all big ones. We lost a lot of big people. And Alex Trebek. Yeah.
Back in November. So I would say 2020 had a lot of crazy shit went down in 2020. I just wanted to talk about it, and that's all that I have for the crazy shit that happened in 2020. And if we're gonna check off the list for 2021, we can already say president impeached again in 2021.
Twice.
And all the stuff that's going to be, supposedly going to happen at the Capitol, all the civil unrest. I don't know. I have a hard time trying to understand the concept of what you want, but neither here nor there. Anyway, that is all that I have.
We could do a whole show just on all that crazy stuff.
We could. So we're going to get right into Men in Black. So James, we both can agree that we both think the Men in Black is some crazy shit.
Yeah.
And the stories that we've heard, and I know that you really like to research the paranormal, so I thought we could just both talk about the different stories that we know about the Men in Black and just kind of discuss it and just pose the question: does the Men in Black exist? Tell me what you know about when the Men in Black was first known to be reported.
Okay, now we briefly talked about this in one of our earlier episodes. You have to be careful when you're doing research on this stuff, because the more recent research tends to be not as accurate, in my opinion. Right, so I learned about this years ago, and this was the prominent story, okay, then, and it's changed. So it starts with a man, son, and a dog were on their boat up in Washington, and they spot these round donut-shaped crafts. One looks to be having problems, emits slag, so metal, liquid metal. Around the boat, one hit the dog, killed the dog, broke the son's arm, I believe. All right, so they have this report. Victim, I'm sorry, I don't remember his name. Then he's visited by this man in black. So this was the first reported story, and I think this was in the 50s.
Okay.
So he urges him, after finding out, getting the story from him, he urges him not to say anything. All right, and then he leaves. Real quickly on with that story, the slag that was recovered by 2 Air Force lieutenants, I believe, who were flying it back down to Nevada, and the plane crashed halfway between. So I thought that was interesting. So that's the first story, the first report of the Men in Black.
So let me tell you what I know about that story that you just told. Yeah. So the man's name is Harold Dahl, and him and his son were salvaging logs from a fishing boat, right? And it allegedly killed the dog, like you said, and injured the son. And then he said, a few days later that he was, urged not to report it. He said, now, this is the thing I thought was interesting. So everything that you said about him being visited and they were there to gather information, and then they told him, urged him not to say anything, I read. But then I also found something that later said that he said the whole thing was a hoax.
Right.
And that he recanted his story after, being under duress, and said it was all a hoax. What do you think, James?
See, now this is, you'll notice this story, this same type of thing go on with different encounters. Right after they're visited by these men in black, people recount their stories, or they refuse to publish their material, or they don't go on with the interview.
So that's interesting that you say that, because when I was doing research for the Men in Black, I had went to Ancient Aliens and thought, hey, I wonder if Ancient Aliens, the TV show, has done anything on the Men in Black. And they did. Yeah. They did an episode on the Men in Black in season 15, episode 4. When I went to Ancient Aliens website, I went to the History Channel, pulled up that entire season. All the episodes are available, with the exception of episode 4. So the Men in Black episode is not available, and I can't find it anywhere. I went to all different streaming services, so I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's just the History Channel, but I went to every streaming service that I could think of, and they are not showing that particular episode.
And I watched that episode, Kelly.
Yeah, they're not showing it. I can't find why that one. All the rest of the episodes are there, but why that one is missing, I do not know. So I thought that was very interesting, because it's like it's just not there. I don't know why. So anyway, so you said that was in the 1950s. So let me ask you a question. Yeah. Did mostly all of these stories about the Men in Black in the 50s and 60s, or do we have stories that are relatively current? Because I know when I've gone down the rabbit hole on YouTube, there are quote unquote videos of the Men in Black.
Oh, right. So, yeah.
Right. So you would say that these stories have been going on from the 50s until the present time, until today?
Oh yeah, they're still going on. And some of the crazier ones are recent.
So let's go back.
We had talked about one. You had told me to watch the video. Do you remember that one?
Yes, I do. So let's go back to the 50s. Okay, so that was in the 50s. That was like maybe the first account. What else do you know about the Men in Black back in that time?
All right, so then if you move a little further on into the 60s, like I said, there was a gentleman who really did a lot of research on these Men in Black and the UFO community. And he was going to come out and do a radio interview. Okay. And he was all ready to go, scheduled. He's on his way. He gets to the studio, and they don't want to record him. We don't not going to let you go on air. So then he's visited by these men in black, and there's a pattern going to form here. Watch. So after he's interviewed or has an encounter with these men in black, he recants. He doesn't want to do any kind of interview or anything to do with the UFOs anymore after a visit with this. Okay. Then he gets mysteriously killed in a car accident, and they never find out what caused it. I believe there was some other car involved, and he swerved into his car or something and went off the road, and so he was killed. But I find it interesting, once again, after he has this encounter, he wants nothing to do with what he was just a minute ago going to come out and expose. And that pattern that happens all the time, even today. There's the probably most well-known video I know of shows these men in black coming into a hotel lobby, long black trench coat. Can't really see too many features, black hat, and it's not a really good video, but it shows them coming in and walking out. And they were there after a bunch of employees had seen a UFO and had reported it. Okay, these men in black come in. They want to interview. One of the witnesses, I don't remember who it was. He just happened not to be there or something. So then they left. But then after they leave, these people at the hotel don't want to have anything to do with the media. They no longer want to talk about what they saw.
So here's one for you. So I had researched one. I don't know if you know about this guy. This guy's name is Dr. Herbert Hopkins. And he was a consultant on a UFO case in Maine. So one evening he received a phone call from someone, supposedly that was an activist of the UFO community.
Oh, yeah.
Asking him if he could visit this doctor and discuss the case. Yeah. And he said minutes later, this dude arrived, right? And he's got a black suit and black tie and very unusual facial features. He has no hair, no eyebrows, and he is extremely pale.
And that's common throughout the Men in Black.
Hopkins said that his dog barked erratically the minute the man entered the home. And after the bizarre visit was done, after he questioned him, he said it even got stranger. So he said that this is what I read, and this is how it went according to a website called The Night Sky. So The Night Sky, this story is on their website, and this is what they say happened. I'm just going to read it to you, okay?
All right.
Okay, so the Men in Black informed Hopkins that there were 2 coins in Hopkins' pocket. Yeah. Which was correct. He did have 2 coins in his pocket. They asked him to remove one. He complied and held out the coin, a shiny new penny, in the palm of his hand. The MIB told Hopkins to watch the coin closely. After a few moments, the coin took on a slivery appearance, then appeared to be going in and out of focus. Then it began to fade, and eventually it disappeared altogether. The MIB informed Hopkins that the coin would never be seen on this plane again.
So think about it. Veiled threat?
He then inquired as to whether Hopkins was familiar with the alleged UFO abductee, Barney Hill.
Oh, yeah, Betty and Barney.
Hopkins replied that he had heard of Hill, but was under the impression that he had died in the not-too-distant past. The MIB informed Hopkins that he was correct. They said Barney didn't have a heart, said the MIB, just like you no longer have a coin. It should be noted that Barney Hill actually died of a cerebral hemorrhage. The MIB then gently suggested that Hopkins destroy any material related to the case. And he did. He also reported that he would have trouble on his phone line, although the phone company said his line was fine, but he never saw the man again.
And did he ever pursue any of the UFO stuff?
No, he buried everything.
See?
No, he stopped everything.
Yeah.
At that point, he decided to stop. At that point, he stopped everything. So I thought that was really interesting because that falls in line with what you've been saying about how people recant their story. However, if this doctor recanted his story, then, well, I don't know if he recanted it. If he buried the thing on it, if he never told anybody this story, then how do we know that it happened?
Well, I think he's telling the story up to that point, but what the important part is, what other information did he have that they buried?
So he's saying why he buried the story is because he was visited by this man in black.
That's what I get. Yeah, that's what did he have that caused these people to take these actions, and what did these people say to him to cause him not to want to release that information?
I have another one. You want to hear another one?
Yeah.
So Paul Miller was returning home after a hunting trip when they saw a luminous disc in the sky. The disc landed in an empty field, and two humanoids emerged from the craft. Miller says that he fired his gun at them, and he says that he believed he injured one when he fled down a road in his car. So he injured one, and then he got the hell out of there. In that moment, he realized that he had lost time. It was almost 3 hours later when he kind of figured out like what happened. And then this is the kind of weird part. He shrugged it off, and the next day he just went to his Air Force job, right? Upon getting to work, he was immediately confronted by three men in black suits. They told him that they had a file on him, despite having told nobody about the event. He said that they knew all about it. And they mentioned the encounter. They said that the whole thing would be better if he just forgot about it. He said that they seemed to know everything about him, where he worked, where he lived. And he said that they already knew everything. Terrified, he did not come forward with that experience until years later. I don't know where this was, and I don't have a year that it happened, but this is just one of the many stories that I found when I was doing my research about people being afraid. So let me ask you a question. And what you know about the men in black and their description, would you say that the men in black are not human?
No, I don't believe they are. Well, let me roll that back. I think some may be human. I do believe that the government may be surveilling people, and so maybe they may be confused with them. But I believe that these men in black aren't human. The majority of them, like the typical, like we're talking about, they have, not any real facial features, no hair. They talked about their skin being so pale, he had to put lipstick on. Now, those I don't think are. Yeah, there's all but we were talking about how when you were doing your research and you couldn't find that episode. Okay. You're the one who told me about this, and I did a little follow-up on it. You had told me to watch this video. The security guard was taking video of the man in black coming in and talking to the receptionist, and then her walking out them. They never see her again. So I kind of followed that for a little while. The guy came out with another video saying that he was going to send all the information he had somewhere. He was afraid that, he was being watched and all this stuff. Well, I was following that. He disappeared. And then when I went to go look for the two videos,
they're gone.
They're gone. And you're the one who told me about the first one, so I know you saw that video.
I did, and it was the woman was sitting. I think they said it was like a law firm or something like that, and you're watching the video of, this is the security camera video that we're watching, and he's talking.
Yeah.
So he's like whispering, like, why is, and one of the rules was that nobody be left alone, right?
Yeah.
And she was left alone. And this guy comes in black, weird features, talks to her. Her demeanor changes, and she like immediately gets up and goes with him.
And didn't she pull out?
Yeah, she pulled out a gun.
Yeah, she pulled out a handgun because like,
and then she immediately put it away.
Yeah.
Right? She immediately put the gun away and then left with him, and they never saw her again.
Right.
And now you're saying that he disappeared, right?
Yeah.
And the videos are gone.
Yeah.
The videos are no longer available on YouTube.
Either one of them. I'm getting a little bit of cold chills, dude.
It's funny that you say that, because when I was doing research, one of the people that says that they had an encounter with the Men in Black was Dan Aykroyd.
Oh, you know what? He knows a lot about UFOs. Our listeners should look into Dan, because he knows a lot. Go ahead, Kev. Sorry.
He said that he was taping a show about the paranormal when he stepped out to take a call from Britney Spears, who was asking him to appear on Saturday Night Live with her. He said he noticed a black Ford parked across the street, and a tall man stepped out of the Ford and stared him down. He said he turned away for just a moment, and when he turned back, the man and the car were completely gone. When he finished the phone call, he returned to the studio to learn that the show had been canceled, and he was ordered to stop filming immediately. So, and he was taping a show about the paranormal.
About UFOs, and he was doing it with the dude from Blink 182. I can never remember his name, but he's convinced that there's UFOs, and he's put money into I don't know if you call it a company or something that investigates this stuff. And him and Dan, they did like an hour and something long interview on YouTube. Look it up. Dan knows a lot about the paranormal, and you think it's funny because he was a Ghostbuster.
Yeah. So here's another one that I found that I thought was really interesting. You ever heard of a guy named Danny Gordon? You hear about him? He was a radio personality. So listen to this story. So he was a radio personality who became interested in a bunch of UFO sightings in Wythe County. Multiple people across the county said that they had seen, objects in the sky, and he decided that he was going to investigate. So he became obsessed with getting photos, and including one time where an entire school bus of students said they saw the UFOs flying over a shopping mall as he took photos. That he was able to get photos at extremely close range, right? And verified that they were not of this world. However, strange things started happening to him. He received a phone call from a man that claimed to be ex-military and warned him that his research could cost him everything, and urged him to stop for the sake of his family. He says he was also interviewed by two men in black suits who claimed to work for a magazine publication. Not long after that interview, he realized that all of his photos were missing. He contacted the magazine for information, and they claimed to have never heard of him, more or less hired him to do an article. Not long after that, he suffered a heart attack and gave up the story after that altogether, and was never bothered again.
See, now where is all that? What did he have, and where is it?
This guy's not coming forward. And again, I don't have a year on this.
Oh, no, but I understand, but I'm saying this, these are kind of some of the things maybe people need to look into, to help collaborate what these guys are saying, because it's crazy shit.
But why would you look into it when you find out that these things happen, and then you no longer want to look into it?
No, I'm saying if you, like me or you, were to investigate his story, that's an angle we could use to investigate it. But if they're going to go after him, I'm sure it's not going to take much we'd probably have to be further along the road to gain their interest, but they don't care, you know.
I just think
they intimidate people to shut down the information.
So, you know, when they came out with the Men in Black movies, I had read somewhere that the Men in Black was a comic book. Is the Men in Black a comic book?
Yes.
Was it a comic book that started back in the 50s?
No.
When did the Men in Black comic book become a comic book?
Well, I think it became a comic book right before the movie, that same time.
So
but I'm not sure.
So you're saying that
a mainstream one.
So you're saying that the Men in Black comic book is a recent comic book?
I believe so. In comparison to the Men in Black story, you know, that's been going on since the 50s. How is all this stuff just kind of disappearing? How is an episode of Ancient Aliens I know I watched, you can't get? You can't find it anywhere.
Can't find it anywhere. I also looked everywhere that I could for that season, that episode 4 of Ancient Aliens, and I could find things about it. I just couldn't find the episode itself.
Coincidence?
Maybe, maybe not.
And like I said, you turned me onto that video. I watched it. I follow up. They've disappeared. You follow up, and it's gone.
So the question remains, does the Men in Black exist?
I believe so. You know, I believe Bob Lazar, we talked about him before. I believe he was followed by quote unquote Men in Black, but I believe that was the government.
Well, back up there. Isn't Men in Black and the government synonymous? Isn't it the same thing? Isn't the Men in Black somehow working with the government to keep the secret of whatever?
Well, okay, this is just my understanding of the way I think of it. I think there's the small portion that's the men, government, humans, and then there's a portion that we don't know what it is. I don't know if they're interdimensional beings, extraterrestrials. So I think Men in Black is just like a big covered term with several different subcategories, maybe. So I think there's the government Men in Black, and I think there's the unknown entities Men in Black.
Well, don't these Men in Blacks work together?
That's, I don't know. That's a good question. I would think out of the stories I know, I would think they were working in the best interests of both of them. I don't know if they're so much working together. I think they put the entities don't want their story to get out because they don't want people to know they're here. And the government doesn't want the story to get out because the government doesn't want people to know that the government knows they're here.
God, James, that's a deep theory. You've made it very complicated.
No,
I just wanted to know if the Men in Black existed or not.
Yeah, they do.
Okay, Professor, because that was really, really deep. So that's all that I have on the Men in Black. Do you have anything else?
Oh, I could drop little tidbits of stories, I've seen and heard, but, like I said, we just want to get people to be interested in it. Go look for that video. Outside of, because if you Google Men in Black, you're going to pull up Will Smith and all the Men in Black movies.
Yeah. But then there are a bunch of other videos that they say are about the Men in Black and stuff like that. So it's just kind of interesting. I don't know if they exist or not, but I find it incredibly interesting that everybody that's ever said that they've encountered them then later recants their story. Right. So,
and it's because like I said, it's a pattern, they're all the same thing. They encounter them. Hey, I want nothing to do with it anymore. Whereas, it is. It's just interesting, What are these people? What are they finding that these people are coming out of the woodwork, to intimidate them? What is that they have? What pictures? What did the pictures show?
Stuff that we're obviously not supposed to see.
Right. And then you go back to, you're talking about there's a lot of videos. I have to go back. When I look at something, and I use this word a lot probably, I have to see if it looks organic to me. Does it look natural? Does it look like if you're talking about Bigfoot, does it look like you think, do you see muscle definition, things like that? Does it flow when it moves? If you look at a UFO, some of these videos that are on YouTube, they're too good to be true. It's showing, the serial number underneath the ship, it's like, but there's others that you look at and they just look more organic. They look real. And that's kind of where I have to go. And that's just what I judge it by, And then you gotta use common sense, Jets don't make 90-degree turns. Things like that. There's basic knowledge that people possess that can help rule out stuff,
Well, I think there's really very little doubt to me that there are in fact UFOs. There's just way too many video, radar. I mean, there's a lot of video and all types of things out there. You have television show after television show after television show about craft in the air. There's no doubt that they exist, right? That is a given. There's just way too much video evidence.
I agree.
What I don't think we can confirm is like the other things, like, is the government working with them? Is there a secret base in Antarctica?
Yeah.
Things like that.
You said, okay, you just brought up Antarctica. When we talk about that, there's an author named Linda Moulton Howell, who she broke the story about cattle mutilations. And so I've kind of been following her since then. And she has all these whistleblowers that are coming out talking about the secret base in Antarctica. Yeah,
and do they really have things at Area 51? Did Roswell really happen? Do aliens have something to do with volcanoes and just all of these different things?
Cattle mutilations.
And cattle mutilations, and what does that mean? And what about like when we did the paranormal ranches, and are there portals? And so there, I think when it comes to UFOs, most of us, I think, would agree that there's something flying that's not a plane that was made by man, right? There's too many times we've had craft, but all those other things I just rattled off are, to me, the unknowns. I think we can agree that there's something flying up there, but the things that we don't know, those are where all the stories, that's all the crazy shit, James.
Well, but you gotta think, I mean, yeah, the things that are flying up there, aren't man-made and stuff, but what are they? There are people who say we have technology that we don't even know about 200-300 years in the future. There's people who believe that we are colonized Mars already. We got craft out there already past Saturn. We just don't know. But what? You see some of this technology, there's just no way. What is it? If it's not man-made, what is it? If it's not alien, what is it?
I think I read an article this week where there was a humming or a noise coming from one of the moons in Jupiter.
Yeah, I heard that.
Yeah, there was like a humming noise coming from one of the moons. I thought that was kind of interesting. There's a lot. Let's just put it this way. If we knew everything, we wouldn't have a podcast called That's Some Crazy Shit. So we have the podcast to talk about the crazy shit. I don't know if the Men in Black exist. You think they do? I'm unsure. But I will say that the stories and the videos that I have read and seen is some crazy shit.
That's why you have to keep an open mind. We just don't know,
So let's just go into random bullshit. So we're going to take a break, and then we'll be right back with random bullshit. If you haven't heard about Anchor, let me tell you, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free, and free's always good. There's these really great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. And then Anchor will take your podcast and distribute it for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need in one place to make a podcast. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. It's everything you need to make a podcast. So, in the beginning of the podcast, we had talked about the crazy stuff that happened in 2020, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the things that I didn't mention that happened that I thought would be kind of interesting, it's, kind of random. Since we were talking about aliens before, I thought I would stay on that. So back in February of, let me back up. Back in September of 2018, September 16th to be exact, through October 30th, 2019, there was a radio signal that they heard in space that repeated every 16 days. Did you ever hear about this?
I don't remember if I did or not, but what happened crazy that we didn't talk about? The government releasing all those videos and coming out and saying, you know what, there's shit we don't know about.
Yeah.
Disclosure.
Yeah. So anyway, that they had detected a pattern, a burst occurring every 16.35 days over the course of 4 days. And then it would go silent for 12 days. And then it would come back.
Same pattern.
Same pattern. And they had traced this signal to a massive galaxy around 500 million light years away.
So just around the corner.
So I find it incredibly fascinating that some people believe that we're all alone out here, yet they're picking up this signal that's repeating, right? It's repeating, it's going silent, then it's repeating.
In a cycle.
The thing that makes it crazy to me is that it's 500 million light years away. I don't even know how far a light year is, but 500 million light years sounds like a really far away.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. And that's where they have to have the technology. If they're traveling here, they can't just travel at light speed. You got to be opening dimensions, portals, in my opinion.
So I just thought that was interesting, that's something that and mind you, this happened back in 2018 and they just barely came out with the story in 2020, along with what you said about the government releasing all of those videos. And a lot of them were alien craft videos, UFOs?
Yeah, they called one's like the Tic Tac and one's Gimbal. There's 3 that are pretty popular, and then there's a 4th one people don't know that was taken over Puerto Rico that shows this craft flying over at a pretty low altitude, and it's a pretty clear picture. It's infrared, so it's not in color, but it's pretty clear, and it shows it going over it. And at one point, it's going over the ocean, dips down into the water, and then comes back out again and continues on. I don't remember the carrier, but that's where the Tic Tac, one of the Tic Tacs is. That's an interesting story.
Yeah, so they declassified those. So that's pretty interesting too. So, it will be interesting what 2021 brings. As far as what we're going to bring in 2021, we have some good stuff coming up. We're going to be speaking with a shaman, a couple of shaman that will be coming up. We're hoping to have some other really stellar, interesting, strange guest for you. And then we're also going to be tackling cattle mutilations as well.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because there's a lot of crazy shit we could talk about with cattle mutilations. So, as always, we're open. So you as the listener, if you have an idea or something that you would like us to try to dive into, by all means, shoot us an email, That's Some Crazy Shit Podcast at gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on YouTube as well. And then, of course, the email. It's always That's Some Crazy Shit. On Facebook, I believe we're K&J's Podcast on Facebook.
Correct.
That is all that we have for you this week. Next week, another episode on Saturday. But until then, keep listening. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes,
Jay?
Thank you for listening. Thank you. And keep your minds open, people.